Greetings and welcome to Trinity Radio. I'm Johnathan Pritchett, and today I have with me from Free Thinking Ministries, Josh Klein and Tim Stratton. Today we are going to be talking about the penny acquittal, self-defense, and what that means for our culture. Fellas, how are you doing?
Good.
You go first.
Yeah.
I'm
doing good. How are you doing,
Okay.
Josh?
Doing fantastic.
Now, Tim, you and I have discussed firearms and things like that in the past, and we've discussed the biblical position, or at least what we think is a biblical position on defending oneself. You know, love thy neighbor, pack thy heat is a prominent article that you've written. So you've dealt with this kind of situation before, but the penny case is interesting because I think in a prior video we did talk about that a little bit, but in this case, he wasn't so much defending his own life, but he was taking action to defend others.
Yeah. Being a true hero.
Yes. There's also another true hero that I believe is not getting nearly enough attention, and that is Jordan Williams, who a guy was actually assaulting people on the J train and including his girlfriend, and lunged at him. And he actually drew a weapon. He drew a knife and stabbed the guy, and it eventually was a fatal wound. And he didn't get charged. Curiously enough, though, and I think that guy's a hero.
Yeah.
But Daniel Penny got charged, and I think if anyone wants to make this issue about race, I think that race was a factor in this, and it was actual Daniel Penny's race in a city like New York that was the factor. If you want to make it about race at all, which I don't think this issue was really about race, even though Black Lives Matter, since the acquittal, has been doing what they do, except just having almost no impact now because everyone's over it. But I don't think this issue was about race. It was about somebody stepping up to protect others. He was a former Marine, young guy, could have just as easily whipped out his phone like everyone else does, but instead sprung to action in the face of threats. So biblically speaking, what is your position on not just being able to defend yourself if you're at your home or somebody's attacking you on the street, but what about you see something happening and you leap to action to defend others?
Well,
because what somebody will say is, well, in the Bible, Peter sprang to action and Jesus stopped him.
Ooh. Yeah. So in my article that you already mentioned, Love Thy Neighbor and Pack Thy Heat, I unpack all of the Peter situation. I mean, first, Jesus told his disciples to carry swords. He said, if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one. Peter says, we've got two. Jesus says, that's enough. And so we know that Jesus, I mean, he commanded it. Peter followed his command, was carrying a sword, and we know that he had the sword because he drew the sword and attacked those who were trying to arrest Jesus. But it does get confusing because then Jesus says to Peter, he says, sheathe your sword. Don't you know that those who live by the sword are going to die by the sword? And I unpack, I'm like, okay, well, look, we shouldn't take that in a wooden literal sense, because surely there's been a couple samurai who have lived by the sword and died of old age. So we shouldn't get too literal with this. But something has changed there after Jesus prays in the Garden of Gethsemane. Something changed, as he's sweating blood. Instead of now running away from the Pharisees when they used to come after him to arrest him, to kill him, instead of running and hiding, which Jesus did in the past, now Jesus walks straight toward those seeking to arrest him, because he just got done asking the Father if there was another way to save humanity. And then he says, not my will, let yours be done. And apparently the Father let him know, no, this is the time that you're going to go save humanity. This is the time to go to the cross. So now Jesus walks toward those who were seeking to arrest him. And he's telling Peter here, sheathe your sword. First of all, Peter, you're basically trying to take on some Navy SEALs here. You're going to get killed. Secondly, do not try to stop what is about to happen here. I'm going to go save the world. So I think that's the best way to make sense of Jesus's command earlier when he's telling the disciples to carry swords, and now he's telling the disciples to put the swords away. That's the first thing. Secondly, last time I was doing a video with you, Johnathan, we were talking about how I applied theology to political matters, and it was all about what drove me was love for my neighbor,
Yeah.
and speaking up against evil, stepping up to protect our neighbors. And by that, I was like, okay, the best way I can defend my neighbors right now against objectively evil policy being advanced by the Democrat Party is to actually vote for Trump, even if we don't like him. The best thing we can do is vote for Trump in the last election. And so here, I think we see from Daniel Penny an amazing example of somebody who truly was loving his neighbors, putting his neighbors ahead of himself, because this really wasn't about self-defense as much as it was defending people who didn't look like him, people of different races. There was little kids, toddlers on the subway train. He was defending all of these people, loving his neighbor. And I think it was the Christian thing to do. I don't know if he's a Christian or not, but he serves as a fantastic example of how Christians ought to behave, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm thinking about Jesus in the garden, and in any other situation, like if I'm about to be attacked and my friend pulls out a sword, I'm not Jesus. I'm not going to tell you to put it away. I'm saying let's try to do what we can to not die here.
Right.
Even if we're outgunned. Yeah, so that situation is a unique situation in history. People forget like there's this whole other testament that also applies to Christians.
Yeah.
Right.
Lots of violence in that part too, and a lot of defending goes on in the Old Testament, your country and things like that. Having to defend Israel, a lot of offense in that too. But
yeah,
so it's the whole pacifist argument has never made sense to me, and I would think that. We hear the progressives throw around love your neighbor all the time, and they apply it to all kinds of stupid things. Love your neighbor means leave your borders open and let criminal psychopaths cross it and bring fentanyl and traffic little kids. Yeah, that's not loving your neighbor.
No.
Razor wire is loving your neighbor.
That's right.
So it's like, but if you don't want needless harm to befall your neighbors, and you are in a position to where you can prevent harm, you may have to use violence to do that. I mean, violence is not always wrong.
Right.
Yeah. I was gonna say the part of the calculus is, what does Jesus say? Greater love has no man than this, than to lay down his life for his friends. And Daniel Penny didn't know what this guy had. He could have had a gun. He could have had a knife. He could have had. And he chose to spring into action and lay down his life, really take the risk for the people that he called his neighbors and his friends on the train. And so I think that's an action of love and not self-preservation, as preserving other people. And then the last thing with the Garden of Gethsemane, the way I take that is Jesus is looking at Peter and saying, no, I'm not overthrowing the government right now. That's not part of the plan right now. Like you guys keep thinking that me as the Messiah means I'm going to overthrow Rome. What I'm actually going to do is go to the cross. So you need to sheath your sword and watch how the quote unquote revolution actually takes hold. It's not. I don't to use that as a proof text saying, oh, we shouldn't even do self-defense or defend other people, is to completely rip that out of the context of what Jesus is trying to teach Peter in that moment, in my opinion.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and notice that Jesus said, sheathe your sword. He didn't say throw it in the trash can and never touch it again. He said sheathe it. It's like if a sheriff told his deputy, hey, holster your weapon. He doesn't mean, oh, you should never carry a gun again. He just said, hey, holster it. Now's not the time to use it.
Exactly. And one of the things that strikes me about like just the Christian, when we think about the Christian thing, I think it would be thoroughly unchristian and unloving that many of us carry guns. And if we see something that's about to happen, that somebody's going to do violence on the other, I think it's unloving for me in a position to stop it, to choose not to. Now, I'm not gonna rag on everyone who pulls out a cell phone in these situations, because police use that video footage, and you want somebody, leave that to the women, I guess. But I mean, you want somebody to get it on video, especially if you're not in the wrong.
Right.
And one of the things that got lost in this entire case with Daniel Penny is that self-defense, you do not have self-defense. One of the requirements is a reasonable, just a reasonable fear that somebody's going to be harmed. You do not have the obligation to wait for them to harm somebody before you interfere. All that is required is that you have a reasonable fear that someone will inflict harm. And a lot of people get this confused because they think, well, you can't defend yourself until you get punched in the jaw, and that or until they've unholstered their weapon. That's not true at all. If somebody is making threats,
yeah, like if they're saying, I'm not afraid to die, I'm going to kill someone today. Like if they're
Right.
that.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
I mean, everyone on that train, especially Daniel Penny and the two people that assisted him, by the way. He was assisted.
Both of them, I believe, weren't white as well.
Right, and not charged as accessories.
Yeah.
Right.
Curiously enough, again, if you want to make this case about race, I'm happy to have that conversation as well. I don't think it has anything to do with race, except for the curious incidents that somebody who stabs a homeless person who was doing essentially the same thing, except maybe was actually starting to physically assault people, which you would want the person to stop them, because no one should have to get hit before you stop a crazy person. But anyway, but Daniel got charged. Nobody got charged who assisted him. It's very curious. So I'm happy to have but those who are making this about race, the principle is somebody did a heroic act, like you said, Josh, laying himself down for the sake of other people, not knowing what the situation is. And you don't have to wait to see if he's going to brandish a weapon or whatever. Because I don't know about you guys, but I have been around enough, bar scenes and stuff from being in a band, and Tim, I know you have too. And Josh, I don't know if you've actually.
He's in a worship band. He doesn't see that kind of stuff.
Okay.
It's a little bit different. Yeah.
All right. Well, you know what I'm talking. You know when a drunk is just mouthing off, saying, "I'm going to kick your blank," and
I did work as a bartender at.
Okay, so you know what I'm saying. So. You know a difference between a drunk. What are you going to say, Tim?
I was just going to say that this raises another point. He worked as a bartender, but he never drank. Isn't that right?
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
That's just lame. Anyway.
Yeah.
Kind of lame. I mean, not even when you're off work. Anyway, we'll have that conversation in another video about
how lame I am. Yeah.
Lame and the Christian view of alcohol. But anyway, but so you've all probably seen, the difference when someone is just mouthing off, talking trash, wanting to, and usually they get laid out, pretty quickly, or if they start a fight and the bouncer's on them pretty quick. Yeah. But that's not the same thing as, you don't hear them say, there's a difference between I'm going to kick your, whatever, and I am going to kill somebody today, and I'm ready to die today. I don't care. Those are fundamentally different situations. So it's not like somebody was just talking trash on a subway.
Right.
Now, I understand people say, well, he had a mental illness. I understand, that there's a lot of issues with that where, excuse me, my light goes off. It can't see, my motion sensor can't see me around. Anyway, I understand all that, but that is not Daniel Penny's burden to know. He cannot know your entire life. Yeah. Just like he didn't even know his prior 42 arrest record,
Right.
Yeah. Well, and it's also like, you got to understand the location. It's not like people can get up and leave when they feel uncomfortable or feel threatened. They are stuck in a tube traveling however many miles per hour on a track. They have nowhere to go.
In a context where a lot of people have either been killed being outside of the subway or on the train itself, especially back in 22, 23, because they have eventually New York put the National Guard in the subways. So,
So it's not like this was happening in Times Square and people can walk away from him, or like it's a public so people making this like, why'd you have to confront him? He's just a crazy mentally ill person. Well, that actually heightens the risk to me. If he has no rationality right now, he's being completely irrational and violent. And so
a couple things can be true at once. We can feel bad for what was his name? Jordan Neely. Is that?
Really, yeah.
Yeah. We can feel bad for him. I do when you hear his past story. But the other thing can be true as well, and that is that Daniel Penny reacted correctly, and I think did the objectively morally correct thing. And as a former martial arts instructor, I can tell you that he handled it with what I have heard. He handled it perfectly. I don't know how you could do a better job and than what he did. So
Yeah,
maybe we
it's
should talk
interesting.
about exactly what he did.
He didn't pull a gun. He didn't pull a knife. He put him in a submission hold.
Yeah, he put him in a submission hold, a choke hold, as they've been calling it in the paper, but it's really just a submission hold. And I do think that the intent is to put the person to sleep, right?
Well, let's address that. I've had to use that exact hold in a real life situation in the past. I've also, as a mixed martial arts instructor and former fighter, I've probably seen that choke, whether it be in competition or in sparring matches, hundreds and hundreds of times since I learned it in 1993.
And no fatalities in your experience.
Zero fatalities. Absolutely zero.
And it's important to point out that he was still alive and put in the recovery position when the police arrived, too. That's a little known fact for some reason, especially people debating on Twitter about this. But, you know.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. So the kind of submission, we call it the rear naked choke, but it's not an oxygen choke. It's a blood choke. It takes away the blood flow, and you come across the neck like this, so that it's in the crook of your arm right here, and so your bicep and your forearm are applying the pressure right here. So you just take your hands and start to do this, and you can just already start to feel something going on. And so you wrap that around, and then you sneak in behind here and you squeeze. Now, if you just squeeze like that and you don't let up, he will fall asleep. He will go unconscious. And that never happened to Jordan Neely, apparently, as I'm listening to the reports. So he never applied it all the way. So I think what he did is there was one time when I was, this was back in the late 90s, and I was a lifeguard and manager of the local swimming pool. And a couple guys, they're probably bigger than me, at least one of them was, they started getting into a fight. And so I ran over there to try to break it up. And the big guy swung at me, and I evaded it. And I somehow got on his back and took him to the ground. Next thing I know, I have him in that exact same rear naked chokehold. And I didn't put him unconscious, but I made it tight enough to where he started going like that. And then I let it go, but I still kept it so I could go right back to it if I needed to. But I gave him enough breathing room. So he wasn't going to go unconscious. And I said, I need you to relax and to stop resisting. And we can just walk away, but I need you to relax. And he started trying to elbow me again. So I tightened it up. And he starts doing that again. And I let go. And I said, are you going to relax? Yeah. Are you going to relax, or am I going to choke you unconscious? Is what I said. And he said, okay, I'm done.
It will not get better for you, my friend.
Right. And so after I was confident that he was going to stop being violent, let him up. And I said, no, I need you to leave right now. And he did. But so that's it, applied in a real life situation, never taking the person unconscious. But you can still hold him there. And I believe that Daniel Penny held him in this position, not tight, but enough to where he was still breathing and still conscious. But if he needed to, he could apply it again when he started being violent. And that's a way to hold somebody there and control somebody while you're waiting for authorities. And after reading the reports, it seems as if he held him there for around 6 minutes. And then the authorities got there and he handed him over conscious. So I don't see what Daniel Penny could have done differently. He was controlling him, keeping him from being violent and hurting others on the train. He was loving all of his neighbors around there. And I would say trying to love Jordan Neely in the process by not choking him unconscious. So I do think he was trying to love everybody, including Jordan.
Well, it's also an act of love to prevent somebody from sin, like
Right.
murdering
Mhm.
other people or causing them physical harm. That's to prevent someone from committing sin and crime is also a loving act. Like,
Yeah.
I would hope that, you know, not that this would ever happen, but if I'm about to do something to beat up Braxton for whatever reason, and you were in the office and you pulled me back and stopped me and put me in a chokehold before I beat up Braxton, that's a good thing that you did to keep me from trying to
Right.
harm Braxton. Not that I ever would. I mean, it'd be easy, but not that I ever would. But I'm just saying, it's a loving act to prevent someone from engaging in that kind of behavior in the first
Right.
place. And I would say, and I know some people are listening, are you serious? Daniel Penny was acting loving towards Jordan? Yes.
Absolutely.
Oh,
And
yeah.
And showing a significant amount of restraint in doing so. I mean,
yeah.
his military training must be kicking in at that point. I mean, to not be overly emotional, to maintain his wits about him. It seems to me that he did everything right. And from what I understand, Neely was hopped up on, was it fentanyl? I don't remember.
Some kind of drugs, I know.
Some kind of drug.
He was the toxic, which is interesting because the medical examiner, after he was pronounced dead, said that he had died from the chokehold before they'd even gotten the toxicology report. I mean, that's insane.
Right.
Mm.
I got to tell you,
it's almost as if there's maliciousness going on.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. Yeah. So I don't believe that for a second, because as I've said, I've seen hundreds and hundreds of rear naked chokes applied. I've even seen people go unconscious over when it's applied to them because they won't tap out. Now, normally you get that wrapped on you, you feel it really quickly. Like I said, just do this and you can start to feel how it gets uncomfortable. Imagine just getting with that submission really tight around you, you will tap right away. Now, there's sometimes some guys out there that it's really a pride thing. And they're like, I won't tap for nothing. And you'll have to put me to sleep. And they're like, okay, fine. And I've seen these guys actually go unconscious. And then the ref has to stop in and break it apart because they will not tap. They'd rather go unconscious over the deal. And so I've seen that. And then they lay there and then they start shaking as they wake up. It's kind of a scary thing to see, but that's how it happens every single time. And so, again, Jordan Neely did not have the rear naked choke applied to him in such a way that it was so tight that it stopped him from being conscious. And so he didn't get the worst of it. Daniel Penny, we talk about, did he love Jordan Neely? Yes. With being the Marine that he is, I know that he's trained in jiu-jitsu as well and hand-to-hand combat. There's no doubt in my mind that he could have got the full mount, which is where he's sitting on top of his chest basically, and he could have just been raining down punches and elbow strikes on him. And I think you could even say he would have been justified in doing that. Some would make that case, but he did not do that.
Well, I think that had he killed him in the chokehold, he was still justified. Like, right. In my opinion, I agree with Matt Walsh on this. I mean, Jordan Neely created the situation, and once you create that situation, you forfeit your life.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want. I don't want him to die.
No,
but had Daniel Penny actually killed him in the process of taking him down, I still think he should have been acquitted. But well,
and the reason
I've been on the jury, I would have been the holdout. Have been like, yeah,
you would have never made it on the jury. They would have dismissed you.
Call this with me out quick.
But that's just to go to the point of what's happening on the subway. If somebody doesn't have the amount of training that Neely does and wants to step in, they're actually more apt to do something probably.
Yeah, they do all the pounding and that.
Yeah, and to me, that is you're forfeiting your life when you're threatening to kill people. When there's a woman hiding her baby behind the stroller because she's scared for her child's life, like you are doing that, and we don't want people to die. But I totally agree that if someone steps in, they're fully within their rights to step in as quickly and as violently as they need to render the situation moot. And so people say, and to me, that it was like, I watch it and I go, this seems actually like almost the gentlest way for Daniel Penny to do this.
Right, because I'm the Danny DeVito meme. Anyway, I started blasting, right? I mean, that's I mean, Daniel Penny should be commended for the amount of restraint that he showed. I mean, yes, it's unfortunate that Neely died. But even the first responders did not want to administer any aid to him because apparently they were worried about getting diseases and all kinds of stuff, according to the reports. So like they were worried about, I don't know how they could have contracted AIDS, but I've heard that they were even worried about getting AIDS from him or something. It's like, and so he must have been had open wounds or something, because whatever the case, they weren't going to give him CPR or anything like that because the man was pretty, from what I understand.
Well, okay, so I've got a question now. Wasn't he conscious when they arrived?
He was conscious, but they also did not want to do any sort of help. Maybe it was on the way to the hospital or whenever. I don't know. I don't know all of the details. I'm just saying what I've heard in the news reports and things that came out in the trial that the first responders did not want to administer anything because he was just too, which is sad. And so when people talk about failures, the subway violence, I mean, I think back to that case in Philly where a woman was raped and everyone just stood there. And so
they needed a Daniel Penny there.
Right. Absolutely. And when you try to pour cold water on these kinds of things and you take whatever position is that, he belongs in prison. No, we actually need more people doing what Daniel Penny did. And in the way that he did it, because maybe if the guy didn't have sickle cell issues and, high as a kite and all that other stuff, he might not be dead. Also, one of the issues that I hope comes out of this is we need to bring back, no one likes the word insane asylums, but the funny part, putting people, because talking about loving, and I know people are like, what do you mean it's loving to put someone in a chokehold? What are we talking about? Loving is not just sentiments, right? This is why people don't understand love. I mean, love is a violent savior on the cross, a violent crucifixion with Jesus on the cross. I mean, love is not just mere butterflies and sentiments. So
that's right.
Hard things can be loving too. But we need more of this and not less. And I worry culturally that had there been a conviction in this case, it would have gone the other way where people would be even less inclined than before.
I think your concerns are completely valid, because I think it's already bearing out just with the case being brought. This case should have never been brought at all. It should have been dropped 100%, should have never been brought at all. And so there was actually a video, I wish I could remember where it was. It was on a subway, and some guy was harassing somebody, and somebody quoted, "Why isn't anybody stepping up to do anything? Like, someone needs to step up." And it's like, Daniel Penny trial, that's why. Because even now you have to decide whether or not you're willing to risk going to trial. So it's not just that the verdict was good. The verdict was good, but that there is the risk still. Hey, am I going to be charged?
Yeah.
You have to have that consideration.
But we can't just, and I don't want to make this a blanket statement, because in fact, where you live determines whether or not you get charged. This has become so obvious to me with the Kyle Rittenhouse and Kenosha. Thankfully, Wisconsin is becoming more sane. It's about time. In Pennsylvania and the whole blue wall. Come on, be men.
Yeah, but Madison's still nuts.
Yeah, I mean, I know. I mean,
you always got to have a crazy blue county,
right? In Indiana, we have Indianapolis. It's insane. But I mean, for anywhere, but I don't live in. I mean, I hate to. I'm sorry if you're going to be offended by this, folks. I will never live in a blue state or a blue city in a red state. Never, because they're insane. Democrats don't know how to run anything. But it does depend on where you live, because when I saw that in Kenosha, Wisconsin, with Rittenhouse, it was plain as day. He was being ran down by armed pedophiles, basically, and he took action and he was charged. And then you get Daniel Penny being charged. Both cases, one defending himself, the other in defense of others. You've got the whole thing here. And correct me if I'm wrong, but we need more clarity on these issues nationally.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And, you know, I think that's one thing that Trump has alluded to, is that he would like to see the concealed carry license. If you get a concealed carry license in one state, that it should apply to all states, and that we have the same laws governing when we are allowed to use the weapon or not. I mean, if the driver's license in Nebraska lets me also drive in Indiana, in California, and anywhere else in the country, I think that the concealed carry license, I think if you go through the work to get that license, you ought to be able to carry it anywhere.
Well, in Indiana, you don't have to go through work.
Pardon me?
In Indiana, you don't have to go through any work. We're a constitutional.
Well, yeah. Well, so Nebraska is now a constitutional state as well, but I still encourage people to go through the training.
Oh, yeah.
And to get their actual concealed carry license from the state. I know a lot of people, I mean, some people are going to disagree with me on that. I think it's good to have it. It's good to go through the training. And then when you do have that license, when there are other states that do not allow constitutional carry, but they will recognize your license, then at least you can carry there. So there's some benefits to having your license. I still have my license, even though I don't need it anymore here. But, you know, getting back to, you know, the fear is now some people may not be the Daniel Pennies, or not be the heroes, not willing to stand up and lay down their life for their neighbor. I encourage everybody to think through this now before you're even in a situation. I hope and pray that I'm never in a situation like that again, or in a situation where I have to use violence. But I've thought about it so much. I've intentionally put myself in different positions where I know what I already know right now, what I'm willing to do, what I'm willing to risk, what's worth going to jail over, what I'm not willing to do. I already have gone through all these things in my head, and I've been preaching this since the 90s when I was teaching self-defense. I mean, I'd even go to the different dormitories and teach women's self-defense, and I'd tell the women who I was training, I'm like, you have to put yourself in the worst situation mentally right now, and you need to decide what you're what are you willing to allow to happen to you, and what you're not willing to do. And you need to decide right now what you're willing to do to make sure that you're the one that walks away from that attack.
Well, let's talk about.
I'll just say this: very hardly ever are you accidentally going to wind up doing the right thing. But it's the people that have thought about this and prepared for it mentally and physically that have much better odds of surviving any aggressive or violent attack.
Well, let's talk about what you're willing to do or go to jail for, even, because to me, in my mind, I'm willing to do more, or just off the top of my head, I'm willing to do more and risk more for either my own life or the life of my family than maybe I would for total strangers. I'm not going to sit here and just declare that I'm as noble as Daniel Penny, you know, because I don't know, because I've never been in that situation. I would like to think so, but I'm just saying I'm willing to risk more, you know, for you know, to preserve my own life, and I'll take my chances with the courts. I'd never get prosecuted here, but I mean, like, if I have to defend myself, fine. I've got to provide for my wife. Yeah,
great point. And you know, so I've on my former church, I served on the security team there for years, and I made an active choice every day before I put on my gun to go to church or to be there over youth group. This was after I was a youth pastor, but I've served there since, just doing security. 2 to 3 times a week, I'd go there, and we would train as a security team and tell ourselves we will put ourselves in harm's way. I am willing to die for the pastor. I am willing to die for anybody sitting in the pews. I am willing to die. We wanted people to go through these mental exercises because you just don't even know. I mean, let me talk about a buddy of mine named John Lovell. He's known as the Warrior Poet. He runs a big YouTube channel called the Warrior Poet Society. Highly recommend this guy. But, you know, I had a chance to go to Israel with him back in 2019 before COVID hit. And we were there for 10 days together, got to pick his mind on many things. But he told me So this is a former Army Ranger who went through all this training. He said the first time he was in a firefight, bullets were flying by, he froze and didn't act correctly because you just never know how you're actually going to react when you're in a real life situation. Now, he said he made some more mental adjustments and made some decisions saying that's never going to happen again. And he found himself in many, many more situations and where he said, oh, how did he say it? Nobody ever got shot that didn't deserve dying, something like that. And in combat situations, he said, you just never know how you're going to react until you're there. And a lot of times, even the guys that go through the hardcore training that the military gives you don't react appropriately the first time. But it's something they say they start to get used to. Now, we can only do our best. And I can put myself in these situations mentally. I can go through the training with my security team. I'm on the range constantly putting myself in different situations. But a real life situation is always different. But the best thing you can do is to tell yourself right now, I will, if I'm in that situation, I would act like Daniel Penny acted. I will, if I'm in that situation, I would, and I will stand up to protect the lives of my neighbors, because that's the best way to love them in that situation. You have to at least be mentally prepared.
Yeah. And the more that people are prepared to do that kind of thing, and the more it changes culture. Like if everyone thinks that everyone else is armed, an armed society is applied. But if everyone thinks that everyone's willing to go to the max for their neighbors as well, I think that has a cooling effect or a chilling effect on those who want to do violent. And like I say, I think to myself, I would do more for my family than I would do like you guys or Braxton. I'd take a bullet for. I'd wear armor, but I had my Kevlar vest on or whatever. Nice. But I'd Kevlar, but I would still maybe take a bullet for you guys. But it's like when I think of total strangers, I want to be able to get to the point where I know for sure. That's a question that you always worry in the back of your mind. And one of the things that I think is great for every man, at least, is get punched in the face at least 10 times, because once you've been punched in the face, you know what's coming. You don't care. Right. It's not as typically for most people's punches. Really, it's not that bad because people don't know how to throw a punch, but you can do things. So practical things, like you've mentioned, get your concealed carry license, probably learn some sort of combat, martial arts or something to, at least for defense. It doesn't have to be MMA style, but you could learn something, right? Everyone should learn some kind of, women too, right? This is
especially.
Yeah.
I think women should learn jujitsu because if a guy was going to attack a woman, he's going to put her in the exact position she wants to be in to tap him out.
For graping and all that. Yeah.
So it's I think if there was going to be one martial art I would recommend everybody to learn, it would be jujitsu. The one-on-one against anybody, that's going to be your best shot at winning, and that's what Daniel Penny used was jujitsu. The problem with jujitsu happens when it's 1 versus 2. Or when maybe you're in a situation where you have to protect somebody else and you can't afford going to the ground. So then you want to be able to throw some punches and kicks.
Well, I mean, you could just, but I mean, you don't have time to learn it all. But I mean, anyone can buy a bag, right? And you can learn, you can practice your drills for just punching and kicking a bag. I do that, right? I have a punching bag at the house. It's also great exercise. It'll burn a ton of calories. I mean,
this is the best martial art, right?
No, I agree. Yeah. But I mean, look, it's like you said, though, you never want to have to be in that situation, because like, I never want to have to shoot somebody in my own house because they broke in and they're trying to do harm to me and my wife and my son, Noah. I don't want that to happen, but if it does, what are you going to do? And I think the John Piper solution is insane.
Yeah, it is.
Just absolutely insane. For those who don't know, John Piper, famous preacher, said, "Well, don't do anything. Just be nonviolent, non-resistant."
Right.
And I'm
He's
just like,
failed. He's failed his family morally. He's failed his neighbors morally. He's failed God. He's not loving his neighbors or his family or anybody else.
Right. You're laying down so he can do it to the next family.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely awful. And that's the thing that people don't consider is that I wish the state of New York would have helped Penny, or not Penny, but Jordan Neely the first 42 times he got arrested.
Right.
This should send a signal that your revolving door of letting
no cash bail and
all of that stuff is absolutely insane. But if they knew that he had, I think it's schizophrenia was one of the things, and severe depression because his mom was killed and all. If you knew all of that, right, and you didn't do him the favor by getting him off the streets, you can't then say when something like this happens that is Penny's fault.
Yeah,
and prosecute Penny for this because Penny, me, you. None of us have an obligation to give anyone telling us they're going to kill us the benefit of the doubt that they won't.
Yep.
I don't owe you that, and I don't need to wait for you to draw some sort of weapon or anything. If you are making serious threats, and it, like Josh had pointed out, and it's obvious you're hopped up on something and potentially crazy, I don't owe you the benefit of the doubt that you're not serious.
Yeah,
that's right.
You don't owe your assailant the benefit of the doubt.
And really, what should happen in situations like this is people like, Jordan Neely's family, his dad's coming out and saying it's two-tier justice system and all that. The classic Black Lives Matter talking points where it's like, well, where were you his whole life? Good job, Dad. First of all. But second of all, it's like, hey, if you want to be mad at anyone, be mad at the state. Like, be mad at the people who didn't actually help him. And you should be able to sue the state into oblivion if people are dying because you have chosen not to prosecute violent criminals. Like the state should bear some sort of responsibility for that instead of a bystander that chose to step in.
Yeah, he's taking his lawsuit to the. I don't think that's going to go anywhere. To be honest with you, I don't think a judge wants that business at this point. No. But maybe. Daniel Penny doesn't have much to give him. I don't suppose. I mean. At least at this point, no doubt he will make money.
Yeah,
Kyle Rittenhouse makes money. Go out, give speeches.
Right.
Who's his lawyer? Who's his dad? Is it Ben Crump? Is that
probably one of those guys? I mean, they're
Crump is
one of those hustlers. He's going to get money, or at least he thinks he will. But Daniel Penny doesn't have anything to give at this point. That I'm aware of. I mean, he's in his 20s and he's in New York. He probably doesn't have a lot of former Marine. Probably doesn't have a whole lot of.
Well, and he's just had to go through litigations in court,
right. Well, they might be going after the GoFundMe pot or so. Whatever they're after, though, it's misguided because number one, Dad, you have some responsibility here. It seems morally absurd and morally wicked for him to sue Daniel Penny. But I actually agree with you, Josh, that it would actually be more moral for him to sue the city because the city is the one who failed. Even the mayor, Adams, admitted that the city failed him on the health and human services level. The city failed him on the criminal justice level, all of it. So I'd use that testimony though here, even though and go.
And guess what? The city's got a lot more money than Daniel Penny does too. So
actually, they're kind of broke right now, but they have access to more money if they keep taxing people. But I mean,
they'll take money from someone. You're really suing all of your neighbors,
right?
Yeah,
when you sue the city.
Yeah. Well, but I don't mind that because I mean, I do think that something has to happen to change New York's behavior. Yeah. I mean, Bragg's office is a disaster politically. It's a disaster criminal. All everything that I hope there's some stank on him that the Justice Department goes after him because it's New York, so you can find something to throw his butt in prison.
And not to make this about the presidential race or anything, but New York did only go for Harris by 10 points.
Yeah.
So there is an underswell of frustration, at least,
Yeah, it's
in
usually
that
like
state.
what, 25, 30 points.
Yeah,
To
I think he lost by 27 points to Biden in New York.
Yeah, and only 10 to Harris. Well, that's because the Democrat Party has become so awful that even you can't win by more than 10 points in New York. I mean, how bad do you have to suck? You know?
Well, and they thought it was going to be a bigger victory because they thought all of the conservatives moved to
Florida
or somewhere else.
Yeah, moved to Florida.
Somewhere else, and
still lost. Yeah,
Yeah.
because
yeah, right.
it's yeah, that party. I think that party is on the precipice of destroying itself for the next 20 years.
I hope so.
Well, yeah, but you don't. I don't want an insane political party in our country. I want at least.
Yeah. Right.
I would like to see the current Republican Party is the Democrat Party of the 90s. I would
Right.
like that to go back to being the Democrats and
Yes.
the Republicans get more Republican
Yeah,
again.
let's go back to the 90s.
yeah, I just
Right.
said that.
Well, 90s was the last decade before the world ended. We're just
Yeah.
kind of watching the world end, slowly draining down the commode. But,
Yeah.
But can we get to real quickly? You and I, Pritchett, had a little not back and forth, just conversation on Twitter about
we always do.
the guy that said it was a vigilante.
Yeah. I don't care what he uses, what term he uses.
Yeah.
I know I saw a 15-second clip. This was Hawk Newsom from Black Lives Matter.
Hawk Nelson.
Huh?
Yeah. Another band.
Yeah, it was a punk rock band. Their lead singer is no longer a Christian. So.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Anyway.
Ex-evangelical, yeah, they're dime a dozen. The Christian music seems so bogus anyway. I was in it for years.
Me too.
Yeah, most of them are a joke. But I got out of it. But yeah, well, he had made a statement that he thinks there should be black vigilantes.
You're right.
But my point was, I only saw the 15 seconds. I don't know what he was bloviating about. Black Lives Matter. I don't care. Neither does anybody except for all the white people that were protesting with masks on last night. Because that's all it really was.
Well, that's why
white people and a bunch of black women lecturing them to mind their own business. Which
that's why he's doing it, because then they will all donate their money to Black Lives
Matter.
Yeah.
Hey, I don't care what color anybody is. If they're going to step up and defend
that was my
neighbors.
Yeah, I said, if you want to call it vigilantism, that's fine. If you do if what you mean is you want to do exactly what Daniel Penny did, which is somebody's threatening to kill people and you put them down, I'm all for it. Now, if you meant something else, like just go attack random white people, I'm not for that.
No,
but I actually don't have a problem with people being vigilant. I want a Batman running around Evansville to help the police out. Right. I think that vigilantism can be noble. There can be a noble vigilante. Maybe it's just being raised on comic books. Fine. I actually would think that we need to have vigilante laws.
Well, and especially if the police are not doing their jobs.
They don't have an obligation. The Supreme Court ruled they don't have to interfere and help you. They can wait till it's all over.
Yeah. So someone needs to step in.
Yeah.
But
anybody that's cheered for Batman knows that there is at least a possible world in which a noble vigilante exists.
Well, and Batman's not really a vigilante because he's got the he's got the police chief on his side that meets him at the rooftop.
Right.
But I mean, do we need a Batman? Because the police, look, my son is a police officer, and he even tells me sometimes it's not worth the hassle. You don't want to mix it up. He says, I want to go home too. I get it. But
and now to put on,
they're not going to let it, because if he does something, he's going to end up in court. You know? And
well, that was the biggest thing that happened when Derek Chauvin got convicted, which is by far the most political conviction in my lifetime of a figure. In fact, I'll get canceled for saying this on your show, but who won't? I think Donald Trump should if he has the ability to. I don't know if he can because it might be a state felony case, but if he has the ability to, if he can figure out a way to pardon.
And here's the thing about pardons. Okay, so I think Walls would have to technically pardon Chauvin.
Yeah, that's what I think so too, because it's a state felony.
Yeah. But here's the thing about presidents: when Trump's supporters will never create enough ruckus. But I was thinking to myself, people are like, well, if Penny gets convicted, they can't. I mean, I think they should listen to whoever was saying that do the Medal of Honor, Congressional Medal of Honor. They need to do that for him.
Yeah.
But I think they also need to do it for Jordan Williams too. So that you can. It's not about race, but if you're going to make it about race, you can head off that race conversation and say these good Samaritans, because you have one in Jordan Williams as well. I hold that guy 100%. As a hero. And he used a knife instead of a chokehold, so it's a little bit more rough. But hey, he did what he had to do. Hero, get them all up there, showcase these people. Now I'm all for that. But had Penny got convicted, no, Trump could not have pardoned him. But if you're the president of the United States and you send men down to the thing and say let him out, the president can get somebody out of prison. Let's not pretend that it can't.
I would think so. Yeah.
Let's not pretend that it can't. You can work deals and all of that kind of stuff to say you pardon. It's politics. So I don't think the political capital is worth it for a Derek Chauvin, to be honest with you.
Probably not.
But I mean, they haven't even done his appeal yet. I'm still undecided on that. What turned me around a little bit, though, was watching Steven Crowder have a knee on his neck for the same amount of time and nothing.
Oh, yeah.
Too
for the same reasons that I was always skeptical of that myself, with my, as I explained already, with my experience in martial arts and choking people out and all kinds of control and submission holds over decades. I was also a criminal justice major and spent when I was in college and doing all kinds of work with law enforcement at the time, doing training with them. In fact, to this day, I still work with our local SWAT team, doing drills and training scenarios, and I get to be the bad guy, and they get to beat me up and shoot me with, fake bullets that still hurt. I looked at that and, I wasn't there and couldn't see every angle, but with what I saw of that, I was like, that alone is not enough to kill somebody.
Yeah. I can't breathe business started in the backseat of the car.
Yeah.
Right.
And now
it's because of a fentanyl overdose.
Right. I think that's what probably.
That's what it was. I mean,
this is why I don't trust these medical examiners, in these blue cities, because I think they're looking for the issue case, The
medical examiner in that case on the stand said, if they hadn't seen video of Derek Chauvin kneeling on him, he would have called it an overdose. He said it.
Wow.
So to me, I'm like, that should acquit you. That should acquit it right there.
Well, but the jury in Minneapolis, they voted for Walter Mondale. There's no hope for that state. Yeah. Okay, they're insane. Sorry, look, if you're from Minnesota, I don't care if you voted for Trump.
I was born in Minnesota.
What's wrong with
you? A guy.
Minnesota needs to man up and quit being crazy. Okay,
right.
It's insane.
They just need to go to Canada. We'll take Saskatchewan, fair trade.
There you go. Well, actually, it looks like Trump's going to take Canada, which would not be the worst. No, but still, it's just Minnesota is insane, and there was always going to be a conviction no matter what.
Yeah,
came out on the stand, which I think hopefully that case it'll take a decade or whatever, but it's going to move up through the appeals process, I think, because there's a lot of issues there that need to be untangled.
Let me ask a question here. I mean, it seems to me that for the same reason that Daniel Penny was acquitted, should be the same reason that Derek Chauvin is released from prison, is acquitted, because it's both the same kinds. I mean, it's not. Chauvin had a knee to the back of the neck, which it should be less dangerous than an actual rear naked choke, which Daniel Penny put Jordan Neely in. And if Daniel Penny is not guilty of murder, why is Derek Chauvin?
Well, I think
because he's in Minneapolis.
Yeah. Well, and I think the real difference in the case is Neely was threatening people and telling him he was going to kill him, and George Floyd wasn't.
Yeah, George Floyd was just complaining about his overdosing. But it was the I can't breathe business that also got me like, wait a minute. Which note to police officer, I told my son this: if they say I can't breathe, you say I don't care. You leave him in the back seat. If you
Yep.
got them put away and you're not in the seat with them, if they die, they die. You know, it's not your not your problem. But if anyone says they can't breathe, not your problem. That's what I told my son. If you get fired, so be it. But don't make that your problem to get them back out of the squad car where something can happen.
And where a bunch of people can. Well, it's interesting. What do you think of? Do you think the recordings helped Daniel Penny?
Yes.
I think the recordings hurt Chauvin. It seems like the recordings helped Penny.
I think. Well, right now I'm undecided, but I was lock him up until I saw the full length recording that came out. That actually was like, wait a minute, because I didn't see all of the business of him whining in the back seat about, not being able to.
Yeah.
I didn't see any of that. I thought I can't breathe was I'm getting choked to death. And then all of a sudden I was like, because I don't know a whole lot about that stuff. And then
when that first happened, I was against Chauvin, but the more and more evidence we were able to consider, I started stepping back and saying, I don't like the guy, but I don't think he's guilty of murder.
Yeah. The OD thing, how high he was on fentanyl. Don't mess with that stuff. And I actually think there's a good strong chance that if they get a different venue to get overthrown on appeal. But I haven't heard even when they're going to take the appeal case up. It's been years now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did they decide not to appeal it? I haven't followed the.
I think they're going to appeal, but I'm wondering if they were waiting for more favorable justices to be appointed or something like that. I don't know. But like for me, like the Daniel Penny thing, it's interesting because it does seem like the recordings of that incident played in his favor.
Yeah.
Well, and all the testimony of everyone saying thank you to him,
right.
That helped in his favor. Plus, when he gave the police his statement, he didn't even know that Neely had died.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's why I'm saying don't hate on the people with the cell phones in every instance, because if you know you are in the right, it may save you if you find yourself in a situation like this where you have to love your neighbor enough to put yourself in harm's way. So you always want, at least since you're not going to be the one with the phone, make sure someone else has got a phone, or whatever you got to do. But I see a lot of people talking trash. Why are they just filming and not helping? Well, not everyone needs to film, but someone does, so that you can.
And not everyone needs to help. Like there are some people that if you step in, you're going to make it. Like we need some self-awareness. Like make sure you're aware of that. That's the thing Penny had. He had self-awareness. He knew.
Yeah, I'm a Marine, 6'2". I can do this.
Yeah. Whereas if you're just some person that has zero, like
5'8" Pritchett, I can still handle business sometimes.
Yeah.
I can take everybody, but there's some people I can.
Hey, I gotta tell you, some of the most lethal MMA fighters I've ever seen are like 5'6".
Yeah, there you go.
Well, that's not me.
5'5".
I think I told Tim this a while back. I said, I'm confident to what I know.
Yeah.
But my concern is that whoever I would be facing would know more than me. So I'd want to like assess. Like I wrestled and know a tiny bit, just a tiny bit of MMA stuff. Not like Tim. But like I have to have self-awareness in that moment to be like, all right, does this? Because I know that I could take down somebody that's bigger than me if they're not trained in anything.
Wrestling will take you a long way.
Yeah, but.
Yeah. But I mean, for me, it's like, I think the older you are, you don't get good at anything overnight. But if you at least start, if you don't know anything, if you don't even have any wrestling skills or any boxing skills or any jiu-jitsu or anything, you should always start today, because even if you're not someone who has any business getting into that, you never know when you're going to need it. And it's a dangerous world. So you should always be learning some kind of martial arts. You should, or self-defense class. You should always learn how to use a firearm properly. I took a handgun course. That was in my 40s. I'd never fired a gun until here recently. I used to be for gun control when I was stupid, but now I'm not stupid anymore, and I want a bazooka and AK-47s and fully automatic weapons, and we need to change the law for that. But anyway, self-defense, learn how to defend yourself, defend others. I think that's a very Christian thing to do. I'm with Tim 100% on this. It's a Christian thing to do. And if you have a reasonable level of health, you should train to be able to defend yourself, defend others with firearms and with just your body. That's and I think you can make a biblical case for that.
I think so too. I go back to something you said earlier, Pritchett, about hey, I don't know if I would step in front of a bullet for everybody, that sort of thing. But it goes back to, for me, like, I will enter into a fight I know I won't win for my family and for a few other people. Like, I'll do that so that they can get away, whatever. Like,
just because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah. But for like a random person, I don't know. I don't know if I'm entering into a fight that I'm like, I'm not sure if I can win this. Now, if I'm like, I'm pretty sure I can take that guy. Well,
I mean, like, much of a, you got at every instance. I mean, you got a cost benefit analysis. But the more there's a cost, the greater the sacrifice is. I think the more noble. Because I'm thinking, like, 20 years ago when I had 3 kids in the house and a wife, do I want to get into a middle of a fight to help somebody when I could, either be seriously injured or killed to where I can't take care of my family? You're going to have to make those kind of decisions. I think that if I did it and something bad happened, the more noble and great of a sacrifice you could, in one sense, but it's also pretty stupid in another sense because you're not there to take care of your family. So you don't have to do that. But it's challenge, but I think, but the less you have to risk, personally, I think the more you should avail yourself of those situations too. Like if you're a single ex-Marine, you're probably better at this than Pritchett or Klein. Maybe not Tim. Tim could take Penny if he was at least, 20 years younger. You're like, yeah, I can handle it. But I'm saying, know your limitations, right? But also assess the risks and the dangers. So, like Tim said, you got to go through that calculus, and most people I don't think have.
And that's why even the charging of Daniel Penny is so insidious to me, because it continues to change the calculus in a lot of people, regardless of, you said you're in blue states or whatever, but that's not how people think a lot of times. They just look at the video, see that he got charged, and they go, ooh, now do I not only have to consider whether or not I'll be physically harmed, it's if I can beat this guy and if he dies, am I going to face litigation that's going to tie me up? Like, do I want to deal with that? And that's why it's very frustrating that now I'm glad that the verdict is what it is, but it's very frustrating that it was even brought.
See, but I think that's part of the intent. This is why when you have such a variegated culture like we have now, and so political and it's so polarized, the lack of clarity goes back to something I mentioned earlier. The lack of clarity on the self-defense. We need to clarify what the rules are, and for not just defending your self-defense, but in defense of others. We need to take a hard look at that, and we need to clarify, and we need to have these kinds of conversations, because I'm always going to err on the side of you better have just an amazing amount of evidence that somebody was trying, like Daniel Penny was a bloodthirsty villain before you even bring the charge. You must have all of the evidence before the booking that he was a vicious murderer on the subway terrorizing black homeless Michael Jackson impersonators, because that's not what he was, and everyone knows it. But we need to have the kind of clarity to where, unless they can do that, you have the assurance that if you help other people, you're going to be okay. Or if you're defending yourself and you have to do what Rittenhouse did and you have to shoot somebody, you have to be aware that, because you could die if you overthink it. Do I defend myself, use lethal force? By the time you've calculated that in your head, you could be dead. So
that's why you've got to do that thinking in advance.
Right. So what would help is a national conversation of specifics, examples, what is okay and what isn't.
I agree 100%. So I have this question.
Not everyone can raise enough money and GoFundMe to defend themselves from a predatory prosecutor.
So do you feel like there used to be that clarity though? Or do you feel
More
like
so than that. I mean, the mere fact that that case even went to trial should raise questions in other people's mind, where I don't think most people would have had that question.
I mean, also every bit of news is nationalized now. Probably 30 years ago, we don't even hear about this case.
Yeah.
I just don't know. Like, did something happen? Well, I think ideologues happened, but did something happen where it muddied the waters? Now we have to have that conversation to say, hey, remember, because it used to be the case that you had to have a pretty knockdown, drag out case to bring a prosecution. Like you had to be pretty sure that you were going to get a conviction.
Well, what does it say about New York City that they thought that they could by bringing these charges? To me, it says New York City is a insane asylum, and they need to become,
I was in New York City a couple of years ago doing some work with Maven, and we were on the subways quite a bit that week, and I just remember how unsafe it felt, especially when I had all these teenagers that I was supposed to be looking after at the same time. And I remember while we were down there waiting for the subway to come up, and there's a bunch of little lines formed, and I remember this girl walking by, probably in her 20s, and she just looked so scared. She was by herself, and she started crying, and I was like, I was just watching her thinking, why is she crying? I think she was crying because she was so scared because there were people, like people were getting thrown in front of the subways in the past. And I think it just seemed to me that that's what she was worried about.
That was like every 2 weeks and around the time Penny did his thing. You're always hearing about this.
And I just thought to myself, man, if somebody was going to go try to throw her in front of the subway, I just thought, well, they'd have to go through me first.
Right.
So then look, I'm not even going to worry about in a situation like that if they're going to put me through trial or even put me in prison. I just know that that's what I would do. Because I mean, at least I hope so.
Yeah, that's the thing. We don't want to think that, but in this culture, you have to read that calculus.
I say, forget the culture. I mean, the culture should not be a reason. I mean, if it's gonna be an immoral culture stopping me from doing the morally right thing, I'm gonna do the morally right thing anyway.
No, I understand that in principle, but in the real world, people they would want to do something, but they have to. Are people going to go to bat for me like they did for Daniel Penny? Daniel Penny raised money on the internet because the right, let's just be the political right, knew that this was like the Rittenhouse thing. They knew that this was an obvious, what are you doing? But not everyone, Tim, including you, may have the opportunity to make enough noise to raise enough money for the legal defense.
Well, and
to say that you would do the right thing is very honorable.
Well,
but at the same time, you could.
It's also every person's different, like you said, Pritchett. Like for me in that situation, I would have the same inkling, but then in the back of my mind, I'm like, I have 3 little kids. I got a 13-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 6-year-old.
Right.
And then I'm going to be tied up in litigation. Like that would go through my mind 100%.
But if there was moral clarity on this issue, then we would all be as honorable as Tim is.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. We got to have that conversation. And by the way, Christian apologists need to get political. I mean, definitely. When it comes to issues like this. Now, I don't know, because you had asked what it was like 30, 40 years ago. I moved from Arkansas to Indiana. So in Arkansas, it was, always if somebody's threatening your life, you kill them. It's nobody cares. I mean, it's like, okay.
Pretty sure it's still like that in Arkansas.
Right. I mean, it's like, if they try to kill you, you shoot them first, If they brandish a weapon, you be faster on the draw. That's how it is in Arkansas. Indiana, I think it's about the same. But I don't know beyond that culturally. Like, I don't think there's been a cultural shift from 30, 50 years ago to today in red areas, but there is a definite shift in blue areas.
Mm-hmm.
And, I stay out of them until they get this stuff sorted out. But even here in the red state, Indiana, I still want clarity. I still want to have the conversation so that people know you can defend others if this, and this are going on, or you can defend yourself even if someone's just, because I'm like,
And the clarity in that conversation could actually help so that people don't have to intervene more, because it's kind of like, when shooters choose soft targets because they're cowards, right? Like if you are a person that wants to instigate violence with people and you assume people aren't going to fight back because they're going to face litigation or they're scared of it, you're going to be much more brazen. And so having that conversation on clarity could help with that too.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
All right, gentlemen, any closing thoughts on this?
Well, the one thing I would say is you said it wasn't about race. I agree it's not about race. This conversation is about race. With Daniel Penny's not about race. The last two things I'd say is I do think the prosecution didn't bring it because they thought they were going to win. They brought it because they were pressured to do it. They're pressured to do it because it's not because Daniel Penny's white. It's because Daniel Penny's white and because Jordan Neely's black.
Yeah.
That's the reason they were pressured into this case. So in that instance, I do think the prosecution was race-based.
I agree.
In that sense.
Yeah, my defense of Penny is not because I'm happy that a white guy was acquitted for killing a black dude on a subway, because it was, that's what they try to turn this stuff into. Like one of the activists said, one of the BLM, and anyone takes them seriously at this in 2024, you're ridiculous.
Yeah, they're
but
done.
One of them has said that it is like open season on black people now. It's like,
whatever.
Apparently, it's been open season on black people since 2014. That's the BLM calling card, right? But
actually, there are more violent crimes committed against whites by black people than there is the other way around. Even though there's a larger population of white people than black people, it's still, there are more. And you can go, the last crime data was 2019 on the FBI statistics, which is the last valid statistics you can look at, because they changed the system and then cities did not report, which is why they're running around saying, "Go, crime's down." No, it ain't. That's a lie, and it's a lie. And when and sometimes I have to call out progressive Christians on this same lie. So that's nonsense. If anything, it's been open season on white people for 25 years. So
yeah,
I guess with my parting words, I would just say, on my forearm, I've got, can't see it here, there you go, it says Si vis pacem parabellum, which is Latin for if you want peace, prepare for war. And Christians ought to want peace and strive for peace. And I think we also need to be, especially Christian men, need to be capable of great violence for the sake of love.
Amen.
When you are capable of great violence, you don't have to use it. And you can have peace. I love the idea of peace through strength, which is a very conservative mindset. And I think the stronger we can be, the more capable we can be to defend our neighbors, the least of these, our family members, and anybody else. When we are able to fight and defend for the sake of love and to see our neighbors flourish, the stronger we are, the more scared evil will be. Evil doesn't threaten the strong. So I think we're called as Christian leaders to be shepherds. We need to be able to protect the sheep, and the wolves need to be so scared of us that they don't even want to get close to the sheep. And that's how I look at things. Underneath this Latin phrase on my arm, I have Ephesians 6:13 that says, "Therefore, put on the full armor of God, so when the day of evil comes, you may stand your ground." Now, of course, that's talking about the breastplate of righteousness and the helmet of truth and the sword of the Spirit and all that. But there's truth there when it comes to physical war, the spiritual war that
the metaphor came from. That's why he's using the armor metaphor.
That's exactly right. It's a spiritual war that spills over into the physical realm. Yeah. And so it's all tied together. So look, if you're in a position where you're Daniel Penny, or you're young and you're strong, man, become that warrior for the sake of goodness, you know, and as we might not all be young, strong warriors like that, but we can, you know, we're stronger than others at our
I'm
advanced
not
age.
young, but I'm still hanging in there, I think.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, Pritchett, you and I have that same mindset. We're in the gym, we're working out every day because we're trying to do the best with what we've got, with what God's given us right
what
now.
we have left, right?
With what we got left, right?
Best years behind us, but we're
hey, I look at RFK. I saw him he took his shirt off and was flexing. I was like, dang,
oh yeah,
he's looking like better than most 20-year-olds.
I hear
so
you.
I'm like, that's my goal, man. Gonna
right.
do the best with what we've got. And I think, you know, let's do that to love our neighbors and to honor Christ.
Amen. And with that, we'll see you next time on Trinity Radio.